Attention, attention! Just recently, a cargo ship from Cairo carrying fresh bananas brings along an unexpected visitor, the Anopheles mosquito.
This unique type of mosquito, indigenous to Africa, is the primary transmitter of the malarian parasite. This could lead to a whole new epidemic in the United States.
What is malaria, you ask? Well, malaria is a blood disease that is caused by the Plasmodium parasite, which is transmitted from person to person by a particular type of mosquito, the female Anopheles. There are more than 100 species of malarian parasites. However, the most deadly and most common in Africa is known as Plasmodium falciparum. The Plasmodium falciparum is a parasitic protist. Once the parasite enters the human body, it lodges itself in the liver, where it multiplies approximately 10,000-fold. 2 weeks after entering the body, the parasite bursts into the bloodstream, where it begins infecting red blood cells.
The blue bodies on the top left and bottom right are examples of the Plasmodium falciparum parasite, as they are infecting red blood cells.
So let's talk about transmission. Malaria can only be transmitted by the female Anopheles mosquito. The mosquito only becomes infected after it has received a blood meal from an individual that was infected. After about 1 week later, the blood received from the previous meal is mixed with the mosquito's saliva and is transferred to the next victim. Since this parasite is found in red blood cells, it can only be transmitted by blood transfusions, organ transplants, and shared needles. Malaria is not contagious, meaning a person cannot be infected by having contact with an infected individual. Everyone is susceptible to this pathogen. Avoid this type of mosquito at all costs.
Time for the symptoms. These symptoms begin 2 to 4 weeks after infection, but they could be latent for years. The most common symptoms are fever, chills, headache, muscle aches, fatigue, and even nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. In order to diagnose malaria, you need a blood sample, like this.
So how does the parasite spread, you ask? After the parasite is injected into the bloodstream of an individual, it travels to the liver where it will grow and multiply. After 10 to 18 days, the parasite will leave the liver and will undergo asexual reproduction in erythrocytes, aka red blood cells. Rapid reproduction of the parasite in the bloodstream will eventually cause a significant decrease in red blood cell count, which will lead to many problems. This is the malarian parasite life cycle.
This pathogen will kill you. If the parasite spends too much time destroying red blood cells, many complications can and will occur. If drugs are not available, or if the parasites are resistant to these drugs, malaria infection can develop into anemia, hypoglycemia, or cerebral malaria, in which capillaries carrying blood to the brain are blocked. Other symptoms include abnormalities in blood coagulation, low blood pressure, and acute kidney failure. In severe cases, cerebral malaria can cause a coma, lifelong learning disabilities, and even death. Daryl, what can I do to keep myself and my family safe?
Don't worry, Comrade Mark. There are several ways you can prevent it. There is no vaccine for malaria, however, because the parasite is a complex organism, but there are several methods to prevent the infection. The easiest method is to limit travel to areas where malaria is prevalent. There is also a variety of antimalarial drugs, medications, an individual can take in order to prevent the infection. The most common of these drugs is malarone, chloroquine, doxycycline, and Ladium. Some drugs require specific dosage plans, weeks before travel, and others could be taken just the day before. Other prevention methods include sleeping under insecticide-treated bed nets, using insect repellent, and wearing long-sleeve clothing in, out of doors, and night. This is an example of a mosquito net.
Have no fear, treatment is here. This treatment is more effective if the disease is treated earlier in the course. It can be cured with prescription drugs. The type of drugs and the length of treatment depend on the type of malaria, where the person was infected, their age, whether they are pregnant, and how sick they are at the start of the treatment. The most common drug to treat malaria is quinine. Malaria can be completely eliminated from the body if it is treated early, but some forms can lay dormant forever in the liver. This is quinine.
So where does malaria exist? Malaria does not exist and will not be transmitted in high altitudes, colder areas, deserts, and countries where a successful malaria eradication program has been conducted. Malaria is usually most prevalent in warmer areas, near the equator and tropical and subtropical regions. Malaria is most common in Africa, South Asia, and Central America. More than half the world's population is at risk of contracting this disease. This map will tell you your chances of risk.
While malaria is not a fun disease, here are some fun facts. Malaria was completely eliminated from the US in the early 1950s. Approximately 1,500 to 2,000 cases of malaria are reported every year in the United States, almost all in recent travelers. The World Health Organization estimates that in 2013, malaria caused 207 million clinical episodes and over 600,000 deaths. An estimated 91% of deaths in 2010 were in the African region. Malaria is one of the top 3 killers of kids worldwide. Every 60 seconds, a child dies from this preventable and curable disease. 2 important currently used anti-malarial drugs are derived from plants whose medicinal values have been noted for centuries. Artemisinin from the Qinghao plant and quinine from the Cinchona tree.
That's all, folks.